He called Ji-woo that evening. Not out of desperation. Not to scream or to cry or to demand an explanation in the chaotic, uncontrolled way that feels satisfying for about 30 seconds and gives the other person all the power. She called because she had thought about it for 4 hours and she had decided she wanted to look at it directly. That was who she was. She walked toward things. Ji-woo answered on the second ring. Sarah. Warm. Bright. Completely normal. Which was its own answer. I want to meet, Sarah said. Just us. Tomorrow. A fraction of a pause. Small enough to be nothing, large enough to be everything. Of course. Are you okay? You sound a bit. I'm fine. Tomorrow 2 o'clock. The cafe on Itaewonaro. You know the one. I'll be there. She was. Ji-woo arrived 6 minutes early, which told Sarah everything about how much she'd been thinking about this meeting. Ji-woo was never early. She believed being early diminished you somehow, made you seem like you had nothing better to be doing. She was early now. Sarah arrived on time. She ordered a tea. She sat across from Ji-woo and looked at her for a moment without saying anything. Ji-woo laughed lightly. You're doing that thing where you assess people. You've been doing it since we were 22. You called me every day for 3 weeks while you were actively feeding lies to the man I was seeing, Sarah said. Conversational. Just the facts. Ji-woo's expression shifted. Not guilt, not immediately. Something more calculated. A recalibration. Sarah, I don't know what you think I've seen the routing data, Ji-woo. Sarah set her phone on the table, screen up with one of the emails visible. I've seen the screenshots. I've seen the timelines. Someone cross-referenced all of it. She tapped the table once, lightly. It was you. We don't need to debate it. Ji-woo looked at the phone. Then she looked up. And something in her face finally let go of the performance, not dramatically, not the way it happens in movies, but in the small, tired way of someone who has been holding a very particular face for a very long time and simply stops. You were about to have everything, Ji-woo said. And the way she said it, it wasn't an admission of guilt. It was almost an accusation. The business. Him. And you weren't even trying. You just walked into rooms and things arranged themselves around you. Sarah looked at her. I worked for everything I have. You watched me work. You were there. I know. You borrowed money from me in year 2 of my business when you couldn't cover rent. I didn't ask you to pay it back. You know that. I know. I put you on the guest list for every event. I introduced you to my network. I answered your calls at midnight. I bought the birthday cake when you forgot it was your own birthday. Sarah's voice stayed level, but something in it had gotten very precise. And you looked at what I was building with Tae Joon and decided it was yours to take. Not because you wanted him. Because of what he represented. Ji-woo was quiet. Did you even like him? Sarah asked. Or was it just the portfolio? A long silence. He's a decent man, Ji-woo said finally. Quietly. I could see why you liked him. But you took him anyway. I thought, Ji-woo stopped. Started again. I thought if I had access to someone like him, everything else would follow. The life. The stability. The being seen as kind of person who doesn't have to try anymore. Her voice had lost its shape. It sounded like something she'd never said out loud before, maybe had never let herself think in the daylight. I've been exhausted, Sarah. I've been performing a version of myself for so long that I can't remember what was underneath it. Sarah looked at her oldest friend. She felt something complicated, not forgiveness, not yet, maybe not ever in the full sense. But something that was adjacent to sorrow. You could have just told me that, she said. I know. Instead you burned down something real because you wanted something that wasn't yours and wasn't even going to give you what you actually needed. Ji-woo didn't answer. She looked at her hands. Sarah picked up her phone. She put it back in her bag. She stood up. I hope you find something solid, Ji-woo. Something that's actually yours. I mean that. She looked at her for a moment longer. But I can't be the person you process this with. Not anymore. She left the cafe. She did not look back. She did not cry. She did not do anything except walk to her car, sit in it for 2 minutes, and call her best coordinator to confirm the setup time for the weekend event. She was going to be fine. She already was, mostly. He sent a message that evening. Not to her phone. A handwritten note delivered to her office through a courier, which was such a formal and slightly ridiculous thing to do that she held it for a moment, just registering the texture of the envelope. Read. I know I don't have the right to ask for anything. But I want you to know that I understand what happened and I understand what I did wrong and I'm not going to pretend either of those things away. I was careless with something that didn't deserve carelessness. I'm sorry, Sarah. Not in the general direction of the situation. Specifically to you. You can throw this away. I just needed you to have it. No signature. She knew his handwriting by now. He did not throw it away. She put it in the same desk drawer as the orchid note. He told no one. He did not pressure her. That was what she noticed first. He showed up exactly where his professional presence was expected and nowhere else. He sent one article per week, consistent, things that matched her specific interests with an accuracy that meant he'd been paying attention far more carefully than she'd tracked. He asked for no reply. He flagged no expectations. Once, in the elevator of a shared building during an industry panel, they ended up alone for 43 seconds. He looked at her. She looked at him. How's the business? He asked. Growing, she said. How's yours? Better when it has good event managers. She pressed the button for her floor. That's a very transparent thing to say. I've run out of patience for being opaque, he said. Life's too short. I'm told you're speaking at the branding conference next month. I am. I'll be in the audience. It's a public conference, Tae Joon. Yes, he said. Exactly. The elevator opened. He stepped out. He looked back once. You're going to be brilliant. She let the doors close before she said anything, which was probably for the best. Before we get to the conference, I need to ask where you're watching from right now because Afrokdramabyalo reaches people in places that still surprise me, and I want to know if you're somewhere local or somewhere far across the world. Drop it in the comments. City, country, anything. And while you're there, if you haven't subscribed yet, this is the moment because it's about to get very, very good. The branding conference was at a large venue in Mapogu, and Sarah had prepared for it the way she prepared for everything, precisely, thoroughly, and with a script she then put aside because she preferred to speak from comprehension rather than memory. She walked onto the stage and did not look at the third row. For the first 15 minutes. Then she looked. He was there. Dark suit, no tie, sitting slightly forward with his full attention on the stage in that way he had that made you feel like you were the only thing worth looking at in the entire room. He was not performing attention. He just had it, all of it, directed completely at her. She kept talking. She did not miss a single point. Afterward, during the networking portion, he found her near the side exit with 2 coffees. You came to a professional conference to bring me coffee, she said. I came to a professional conference because brand strategy is something I'm genuinely interested in. He held out the cup. The coffee is a separate and unrelated development. That's the worst excuse I've ever heard from someone this intelligent. I think the word you're looking for is transparent. I said that in the elevator. I know. I've been working on it. He was smiling now, fully, not the controlled almost smile from the beginning but the real version, the one she'd been cataloging for months. You were brilliant up there. You said that in the elevator too. I was right in the elevator too. She took the coffee. She looked at him over the rim. I'm still annoyed at you. I know. You should have trusted me. I know that too. Saying you know it doesn't automatically fix it. I'm aware. That's why I'm also showing you, not just saying it. He met her eyes steadily. I see the difference between words and evidence, Sarah. I'm trying to be evidence. She looked at him for a long moment. In the background, the conference carried on. Someone laughed loudly near the catering table. A presentation was starting in the adjacent hall. None of it was the most relevant thing in the room. I need more time, she said. I have time, he said simply. I have as much as you need. She walked back into the crowd. She could feel him watching her. She did not turn around. She went home that night and stood at her window for a long time looking at the city, and she thought about the difference between protecting yourself and punishing yourself, which are 2 different things that can look identical if you're not careful. He was very careful. Ji-woo's life began to come apart the way expensive things do, quietly at first in places that don't show. The invitations stopped. Not all at once. One gala she didn't hear about until after. One group dinner that somehow didn't include her. The social geography of Seoul's connected class is precise and unforgiving, and word had moved the way it always moves in tight circles, through implication and distance rather than announcement. Tae Joon had said nothing publicly. He didn't need to. The fact of the breakup, combined with certain people asking certain questions and not receiving satisfying answers, was enough. Ji-woo called Sarah 3 times in the week after the cafe confrontation. Sarah let the calls go. She had said what needed to be said. She was not a resource that could be drawn on. Ji-woo called others. She called the people she'd networked with through Sarah's events, the ones she'd positioned herself next to, using Sarah as the bridge. One by one they were cordial and vague and did not extend the warmth she was looking for. She went home to the apartment she was 2 months behind on and stared at the designer shelves she'd filled on installment plans and thought about the returns she was still waiting for from the investment that a man named David O had told her was restructuring and not to worry. He should have worried months ago. The investigation into David O's firm was triggered by a separate client complaint and landed on Ji-woo's name inside 2 weeks because the investigators were thorough and her referral fees were documented. She received the notice on a Tuesday. She called her lawyer on Wednesday. She called no one else because there was, it turned out, no one who would have known what to say. The court appearance was short and pointed. She had participated in a fraudulent investment structure. She had not designed it, but she had profited from it and had continued referring people to it after warning signs were visible. The judge was not interested in her personal difficulties. He was interested in documented harm and documented participation. Suspended sentence. Community service. Financial penalties that wiped out her accounts and required a payment plan for the remainder. The apartment had to go. The car on lease had to go. The designer collection, assembled over years of careful performance, photographed and posted and curated into the image of a life she'd always wanted, had to be sold piece by piece, through resale platforms where the prices were never as good as you needed them to be. She moved into a small place in a quieter part of the city. He got a job. An actual job, 9 to 6, administrative work at a mid-size company, the kind of job she had always privately considered beneath her trajectory. He was good at it. She was organized, actually, when she had to be. She had skills that had always been there underneath the performance. She didn't post about any of it. The account went quiet. The followers moved on within a few weeks. The engagement dried up. The algorithm stopped surfacing her to people who'd once saved her outfit photos. And Ji-woo, sitting in her small apartment one evening with takeout from a place that definitely didn't need a food photo taken of it, understood something that she had spent years running from. The life she'd built had been entirely made of other people's perceptions of her. And when the perceptions changed, there was nothing underneath them. He thought about Sarah. Not guiltily, or not only guiltily, with something closer to grief. For the friendship which had been real underneath everything. For the years of it. For the version of herself that had existed before she decided that money was the thing that would make her feel safe and had spent a decade chasing it with increasingly poor judgment. She thought about what Sarah had said. I hope you find something solid. Something that's actually yours. For the first time in a long time, she thought maybe she should start looking. Sarah's pitch to the hotel chain had been in development for 6 weeks. It was the most ambitious proposal Vivid & Company had ever put forward. Full event strategy, brand activation, guest experience design, and an ongoing management contract that would run for 18 months. The kind of scope that either launched a company into its next chapter or taught you something expensive. She presented on a Friday afternoon with her 2 senior coordinators. She spoke for 40 minutes and took questions for 20 more and walked out of the building into the Friday afternoon air and stood on the pavement and called her head coordinator. How do you feel? Her coordinator asked. Like we were excellent, Sarah said. The rest is up to them. The call came on Monday morning. They got it. Sarah put the phone down and sat at her desk for a moment in complete silence. Then she stood up and walked into the main workspace and said to her team of 4 people, "We got it." And the resulting noise was loud enough that the office downstairs sent an email asking if everything was okay. She took them all to dinner that evening. She paid. She gave a short speech that made 2 of them tear up, which she'd anticipated, and she raised a glass to the version of Vivid & Company that had existed 3 years ago in a one-room studio with a second-hand laptop and a client list of exactly 0. And to everything it had taken to become what it was now. Tae Joon was not there. She had not invited him. This victory belonged to her and her team, not to any man standing beside her. She called him after walking to her car through the night air. "We got it," she said when he picked up. "I know." His voice was warm. "Soo-yeon told me. She follows your company's news. Your assistant tracks my contracts. She says you're impressive and that I should be deeply grateful you're still speaking to me. She's right on both counts. I sent her flowers last week. Of course you did. Sarah laughed and stopped walking, standing on the pavement with the city going past her. Tae Joon. Yes. I want to try again. Properly. With the understanding that if you let anyone put something in your ear about me again without coming to me first, I will make your next 3 corporate events deliberately, specifically, and irreversibly themed around beige. A silence. Then he laughed and it was the best sound. Complete beige. Or just an unfortunate amount. Wall-to-wall Tae Joon. Beige tablecloths. Beige lighting. Beige centerpieces. I know people. That's the most terrifying threat I've ever received, he said. And I've been in corporate negotiations for 12 years. Remember it. Sarah. Yes. Thank you for giving me something to earn back. His voice had gone quieter now, the way it did when he wasn't performing professionalism. I'm going to be careful with it this time. You better be, she said. Good night, Tae Joon. Good night. She stood there for another moment, phone in hand, city around her, something warm and unhurried settling in her chest. Then she drove home. 3 weeks later, on a Saturday afternoon with nothing scheduled and nowhere urgent to be, they went to the Chagall exhibit. It was quieter than expected, a weekday crowd somehow carrying into the weekend, and they moved through it slowly, which suited both of them. He read the placards. She didn't, mostly because she'd read about the paintings in advance. She talked. He listened with his full attention the way he always did and occasionally said something that made her stop and actually think, which was, she'd decided, the single most attractive quality a person could have. At a large painting near the back of the gallery, all deep blues and floating figures, they stood side by side not talking for a while. Just looking. Their shoulders were almost touching. Neither of them adjusted the distance. This one makes me nervous, he said. Why? It feels like falling. The figures have no ground. That's the point, she said. They don't need it. They have each other. He turned and looked at her. Just looked, with that complete, unhurried attention that had been undoing her composure since the orchid argument. Sarah. Don't say something terribly sincere in a museum, Tae Joon. Why not? Because I'm not prepared for it and there are other people here. What if I said it quietly? Still a museum. He stepped slightly closer. I think you're the most capable person I've ever worked with, he said quietly. I think you're also one of the funniest. I think you're warm in a way you don't advertise and sharp in a way you don't always use, and I think I was an idiot for 3 months and I'm done being that. He paused. I'm also in love with you, which I'd like to say in a museum or wherever else I happen to be standing when it's relevant. She looked at him. I had a whole response prepared, she said. It was measured and had clear terms. What happened to it? You ruined it by being sincere in a museum. He smiled. Fully. I'll take that as progress. She stepped forward and kissed him, which meant she decided first, which meant she absolutely had the power in this, which was exactly how she intended it to be. He kissed her back with the focused, unhurried attention he gave everything he cared about. In the background, one of the Chagall figures floated above an imaginary town in perfect, groundless peace. Sarah Kim would not let anyone tell the story of this moment differently later. She kissed him first. That was what happened. That was what she would be telling this story as if anyone would let her forget it. 2 months after that, Vivid & Company had expanded into a 6-person operation with office space that no longer required moving things around to hold a meeting. The hotel chain contract was running. A second major partnership was in final negotiations. Sarah had hired a junior coordinator who reminded her of herself at 26 and was therefore both a delight and slightly exhausting. She was in the middle of reviewing vendor contracts on a Tuesday evening when Tae Joon knocked on the glass door of her office, which he did instead of texting because he'd learned that she found it more difficult to ignore a person than a notification. He was holding a paper bag that contained, she already knew, spicy tteokbokki from the place 2 blocks over. You're not on my calendar, she said without looking up. No, he agreed. I'm working. You're always working. And yet things keep getting done. Interesting. She glanced up. Is that the one with extra fish cake? Obviously. She saved the document. 10 minutes. I'll take it. He set the food on the corner of her desk and sat in the chair across from her. the client chair that no longer meant what it used to, and watched her finish the paragraph she was on with the patient appreciation of someone who found the way she worked genuinely interesting rather than slightly inconvenient. She looked up. He was already looking. "Stop doing that," she said. "Doing what?" "Looking at me like I'm a Chagall painting." "I find you similarly compelling," he said. "It's a fair comparison." He picked up her chopsticks. "You're insufferable." "You like it." "I tolerate it." "You like it," he said again, unbothered, and she didn't argue because she did, and they both knew it, and that was fine. That was fine. Outside, Seoul was doing what it always did. Enormous and lit and full of the specific restlessness of a city that doesn't stop for anything. It hadn't stopped for Sarah's heartbreak or her rebuild, or the slow and hard-won process of learning what she was worth and refusing to accept less. It had just continued, indifferent and full as cities do. And Sarah Kim had continued too. Through the betrayal and the loss and the period of quiet reconstruction. Through the good months of the business and the difficult ones. Through the careful, time-taking process of trusting someone again without losing the knowledge of her own judgment she'd earned the expensive way. She was exactly where she was supposed to be. Not because things had been easy. Because she had not let hard things stop her. Ji-woo, somewhere on the other side of the city in a smaller apartment with a regular job and a life being rebuilt from actual foundations, was learning the same lesson at greater cost. Sarah hoped it took. She genuinely did. Not because it excused anything. As some lessons are worth surviving. Greed had cost Ji-woo everything it had promised to give her. It had taken her friends and her reputation and eventually her freedom for a time. It had given her nothing permanent. Loyalty, patience, and the specific stubborn dignity of refusing to be diminished had cost Sarah 3 difficult months and 1 very bad night on her kitchen floor. It had given her a thriving business, a team she was proud of, and a man across the desk from her who understood the difference between looking and seeing and had chosen, despite the cost to his own ego, to do the harder thing. Not a bad return. "Ready?" he asked, nodding at the food. "Always," she said. "And if that is not worth subscribing to Afrokdramabyalo for, I do not know what is." Subscribe. Turn on notifications. Come back. We have more exactly like this, and every single one of them ends the way this one did, with the right person winning and justice landing where it belongs. The story was never about the money. It was about what you're made of when the money doesn't come. When the shortcut turns out to be a cliff edge. When the friendship was real even though the friendship is gone. When love requires patience and the patience requires knowing yourself well enough to wait. Sarah Kim knew all of this. She'd learned it the hard way, which is the only way it actually stays learned. She was, as it turned out, more than enough. She always had been. She just needed the wrong things to fall away before she could fully see it.